Hello, Colin.
Hello.
We've discussed many films together on review at this point.
Yes.
But we have not talked about a single Canadian filmmaker. And
Really?
So today we're going to talk about the one Canadian filmmaker.
David Cronenberg.
David Cronenberg. We've never talked about a David Cronenberg movie on this channel ever.
I don't think we've even mentioned him.
Yeah, but in any of our
like
videos.
in passing, yeah. Which
Even
is
though
weird.
He's one of my favorite filmmakers.
He's Toronto's favorite son. This is so bizarre. And yeah, Mike said you were interested in doing The Fly, and I was like, oh shit, yeah.
That's one of those
It
ones
seems
people
so
are going to see this
weird.
video in their feed, and they're going to say they haven't done that yet. I feel like they've already
It's so,
talked about The Fly.
it's so strange, yeah. It kind of goes hand in hand with like The Thing. It reminds me of like anytime like somebody says that remakes are shitty and lazy and terrible, and it's always two movies that come up. It's The Thing and then The Fly.
Yeah.
And those are the two greatest examples of like remakes done right, I think.
Yeah, and they're lumped together too because they're both 80s remakes of 50s. I think they're both 50s.
Yeah,
right?
I think so, yeah.
50s sci-fi. With some of the most amazing and disgusting special effects you'll ever see.
yeah, oh god,
That's
this
The Thing,
movie.
which we've discussed The Thing. You and I did
Yep.
The Thing. And so now we're here to talk about The Fly.
Yeah.
Shot in Toronto.
Yes, like
There's the CN Tower.
that's like most of his films, I think.
Yeah, Eastern Promises obviously was shot wherever.
Yeah, I want to say probably London. I think that might have been the first where he shot outside of Toronto. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with David Cronenberg's sort of early stuff.
Oh my God, that's his best stuff.
I know, but I think The Fly, like I was in, I don't know, grade school when that came out, and everyone was really excited to see it. And that was like, that and The Thing were like the two movies that, I really wanted to watch on VHS when they came out. But
Those are the
yeah.
movies your friends dare you to watch.
Yeah,
I
they're
dare
like-
you to sit through this without puking.
Oh, it was amazing. Yeah, I loved it.
The Fly, I think, is my favorite David Cronenberg movie, and I feel like that's a real like basic bitch pick, but I don't care.
It was probably the first one that I saw.
That might contribite to it, but it's also like, I mean, he's obviously made movies that are more like complex and challenging with stuff
Yeah.
like Naked Lunch or Videodrome, where,
Yeah.
where you really have to kind of work out what the hell's happening.
I can think of at least two things wrong with that title.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real simplicity to this movie that is its biggest strength. It's so streamlined and so
Yes.
stripped down.
It is like an hour and 35 minutes, and
Not
that
a
would
wasted moment.
That would not happen this day. Like modern filmmakers have to learn how to be efficient with stuff. There's no reason why fucking like a Deadpool or a comedy should be like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, you got to leave in all the funny banter, all the
just
funny
like
improv.
the bloat. It's why I always love when it's like Halloween and we go back and watch, when it's like October, and you go back and rewatch like old 80s horror movies. They're
in
all
and
like
out.
79 minutes. It's
Yep.
like, mwah, it's amazing. Yeah,
But this one in particular feels shorter than it is. It's like, yeah, a little over 90 minutes,
Yeah.
but it is so compact and efficient and like intimate that it just flies by. No
So to
pun
speak.
intended. But like, I mean, the opening right off the bat, it starts mid-conversation
Yeah.
between our two main characters.
What am I working on? I'm working on something that'll change the world and human life as we know it.
Change it a lot or just a bit? You'll have to be more specific.
You don't even see their like introduction. It's just like they're already into it. And then
I was thinking about
it's
that,
just like,
yeah. Like a modern movie, you'd have like 3, 4, 5 scenes before they even get there.
You'd have an intro, like a prologue with him like doing experiments or something, and then blah, blah, blah.
The introductory scene between her and her boss, who they
Yeah.
have a history that you learn throughout the movie, just gradually, like it's not.
Yeah.
But in another movie, it would be you'd have that scene where he's telling her that she has to cover the science convention. Oh, I want to do real stories.
Yeah.
There's none of that.
It would be
It's
like
just-
30 to 45 minutes before you met, they met and like started talking.
Yeah.
And this is so right off the bat, it's great. But the whole movie's like that. And you said like intimate. It's crazy. There's only like 3 main characters really in this whole movie.
I've wondered if there's anyone's ever done like a stage production of it, because it feels very theatrical. Because
Yeah.
most of it just takes place on one set.
I know there's an opera.
Okay, that makes even more
Howard
sense.
Shore made an opera.
Oh,
apparently.
okay.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any clips or anything like that. But it seems like you could do that because it's really just the one set with the odd, like in John Getz's office or something like that.
Yeah.
It's the only time.
Yeah,
you
they
kind
go
of-
to a couple places, but you could rewrite that where the whole thing
For
is
sure,
basically,
yeah.
or maybe 2 sets. But I guess that makes sense that it would be turned into an opera because Howard Shore did the opera version.
Yeah.
Because the score is very bombastic in
It
a way that
is.
actually works despite the movie being so simple.
It's a weird tone. Like, it doesn't seem to fit the movie, but then it does. Like,
Yeah.
it's very weird. I was getting shades of RoboCop in the end credits.
Yeah, that's I think what works so well about it is like it's funny in rewatching it. It gets to the end credits. It has like the most tragic, sad ending of all time.
And like,
And
it
then
kind of
and then
fades
it
out.
Fades out just immediately. No like final scene to
Yeah.
kind of like calm you down. It's just like he's fucked. Everyone's miserable. We're done.
Yeah.
And then it cuts to the credits, and the cast list is like a dozen people. And
Yeah,
then that's it.
it's crazy. It's which is kind of amazing. I mean, it works. It's just so taut, and there's not like an ounce of flab, I think, anywhere on this.
And the basic story, I guess, if anyone hasn't seen it, it's funny. It has one of the most. It's David Cronenberg's probably most like famous movie. It has one of the most famous taglines of all time.
I'm afraid!
Don't be afraid.
No. Be afraid. Be very afraid.
Which is "Be afraid, be,
Be
very
very
afraid.
afraid.
It's a line of the movie, and it sounds corny in the movie just because you've heard it so many times.
Yeah.
But an alternate tagline for the movie that I thought of is "He just wanted to get laid."
It's true.
That's the catalyst for the whole story.
Oh, that charmer.
Yeah, because it starts at that science convention, and he's Jeff Goldblum is Seth Brundle. He's an awkward, nerdy scientist man.
Okay, these names. We have to talk about the character names. It's not mentioned very much in the script, but Seth Brundle is the only time you kind of hear his full name. But
Yeah.
like,
well, then they start calling once he starts transforming into the Fly. He's
Brundle
Brundle
Fly.
Fly. Yeah.
How does Brundlefly eat?
you have Gina Davis playing Veronica Quaife. And then John,
I didn't even know she had a last name.
Yeah, well,
I guess
everyone
it's just in the credits.
Everyone calls her Ronnie in the thing.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
Veronica Quaife, and then John Getz plays Stathis Borans.
Yes.
Which is like,
Stathis sounds like staph infection.
yeah.
Like, it sounds
maybe that-
gross.
You get grundle queef and like staph infection. That's very Cronenberg. I don't know if that was intentional, but it probably
yeah.
is.
But so the movie starts like with him at the science convention. She's a journalist that's
Yeah.
trying to find a story at this.
For Particle magazine.
Her boss is her ex-boyfriend, so
Yeah.
there's a little like love triangle thing going on.
He's kind of a skis bag.
Oh yeah. Oh, we'll talk
my
about
God.
Stathis more. But yeah. So then he invites Seth Brundle invites Ronnie to his lab, not for a story, but because he thinks he'll impress her with his teleportation pods. And
Because he doesn't even know she's a journalist.
he doesn't. When he finds out, like he's surprised that she's here to
"Oh,
try and write a
no."
story, and then he's
Yeah.
of course weirded out because there's no information about what he's doing at all. And that's sort of the kickoff to the whole movie. They form a relationship, and there's some drama and tension because her ex-boyfriend is involved in the situation, and it's very, like I said, intimate. And I think like it's one of my favorite movies, but I don't watch it very often because everyone talks about like the effects, and we'll talk about how great and disgusting all the effects
Yeah.
are. But the thing that always sticks with me is how just like sad the movie is.
It is really
it's
sad.
It's so profoundly sad.
Yeah, especially the last act.
Yeah, well, the
oof.
entire middle, because he teleports and there's a fly in the chamber with him, and so they get genetically fused. So the bulk of the movie is, if you strip away like the sci-fi elements, it's basically just like someone watching someone they love get sick and just like deteriorate
Die
in front
horribly.
of them. Yeah, it's obviously it's in the 80s, so you could say it's a metaphor for like AIDS. But
Yeah.
I always think of it more as like cancer, but really anything.
Yeah.
All those scenes where she comes to visit him and he's just getting like worse and worse. He's using like crutches to walk, and the drama of it all. Like Gina Davis's performance is so great. She really sells it as like a believable situation. Even
Yeah,
though
for sure.
Some of the visuals are kind of absurd and weird, but she just completely sells the whole
Yeah,
thing.
she kind of grounds it, especially, there was that scene, I think, later in the movie where he's like vomiting. He starts vomiting to dissolve the food and stuff,
Yeah.
and he's got all these like stains on his shirt of just like, it looks like jizz or something.
Yeah, well,
It's
that's
really
the grossest
gross.
part of the entire
Oh,
movie.
and she gives him that big
She gives him a hug, and you're
it's
like, oh,
God. Do you think this kind of like, I know like Videodrome kind of gave Cronenberg the body horror kind of label, but I think this movie may have like,
I mean, all of his early movies. His first movie is Shivers,
Okay, I
which
never.
is-
Yeah, I'm kind of oblivious to like
Okay.
anything past. I only recently saw Scanners. I've seen nothing before that. I haven't seen The
Okay.
Brood or.
Yeah, no, The Brood, Shivers,
Rabid.
they're all Rabid. They're all, and that's why I like Cronenberg so much. Especially now, like people talk about like what's scary, like Longlegs coming out.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, it's not even scary. It's like, well,
It's
ideas
very-
are scary.
It's
like,
very subjective.
Yeah, it's not jump scare scary like a Conjuring movie or something, but it's got ideas that stick, and that's why I like Cronenberg so much because very few filmmakers tap into my specific fears, and all of those, especially his early movies, are all about like the internal horrors.
Yeah.
The how disgusting and unpredictable the human body is. Where you can just one day wake up and you just have cancer. For no reason,
Or
it just happens.
Or your dick falls off. And you put it in a medicine cabinet.
Or you turn into a brundlefly and start vomiting on your donuts.
That's disgusting.
But yeah, so that's why, like Shivers was his first movie, and an alternate title for that, I think the original title for it was It Came From Within. So like
okay.
even from the beginning, he's talking about
Yeah.
like body horror and the grossness of what's going on that you can't see or can't predict and have no control over.
I'm gonna have to like watch those. I think because
They're all good.
It's really weird. It's like I started with The Fly. That was the first one that I saw, and then The Dead Zone, I think, and those were like his two most popular.
Those are like his first, big studio movies.
Yeah, exactly. And then only recently, I think in the past 5 years, I went and saw Videodrome. I didn't go and see it. I just rented it, but.
You went to your couch and saw it.
Yeah, and then Scanners, I think last year or something like that. So it's kind of interesting going back and like seeing, but I think like Videodrome was where, I don't know, it's sort of like everything just coalesced, and it was like the David Cronenberg you kind of know going forward.
Body horror, but there's also really surreal visuals.
Yeah.
That's something I want to play for you.
And this movie's more straightforward than something like Videodrome,
Yeah,
but it
for
does.
sure.
The visuals are so weird that they're kind of surreal. Like once he starts like climbing on the walls and dissolving people's body parts with his vomit.
How does Brundlefly eat?
That's disgusting.
We have to talk about the practical effects in this movie, and it's Chris Wallace who did Gremlins.
Yes, yeah.
He created the Gremlins, and he worked on a bunch of other stuff. I think Return of the Jedi, he was like a creature consultant, and then Dragon Slayer, he worked on Arachnophobia. But his whole team that he had on this, they had the team in the credits, and two guys, Jim Isaac was one of the puppeteers, and Kelly
Who's the director
Lukowski-
of Mike's favorite movie, Jason X.
Jason X. Which I worked on. So I actually worked with Jim, terrific guy, very, very nice guy. He was the director of Jason X. Kelly Lukowski was another guy on the puppeteer team, was the visual effects supervisor on Jason X.
Oh, okay.
So they were kind of like a team. And they had worked
Because
on...
that whole movie was all Canada too, right?
Oh
That's a
yeah,
super
it was shot in
Canada
Toronto.
movie, yeah.
But then we had worked with them previously on Existence. On those,
Wait, did you work on Existence?
No, it was just the company
okay.
that I worked for. I had started right after Existence was finished. They had done the little like two-headed lizard thing.
Oh yeah.
So we had the puppet of that in the office. It was really cool. So I think Jim or Kelly had like puppeteered that or something.
Okay.
Yeah, it was really neat. I remember we were like bidding on, so I worked at a previous company when Existence was being made. So everybody was kind of bidding on it. And I left that company to go to the one that actually did Existence. And at the time, I remember his producer came in, David Cronenberg's producer, and he was like, if there's any digital effects, it has to look real because David can't be, his name can't be associated with CGI.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay. This was like kind of early days,
Well, that's I mean, he was like one of those practical effect guys. Like some of the. So you've never seen Naked Lunch?
I saw that in the theater.
Okay. Yeah, some of the big bug creatures and
mugwumps
that.
or whatever.
Mugwumps, yeah.
Hello, Bill. What's up?
Yeah, Existence is kind of the last Cronenberg before he kind of moved away from strictly like body horror stuff.
Yeah.
Then he started like Eastern Promises.
Eastern Promises. It was kind of like
History of Violence.
This is like a normal movie.
Yeah, and they're good movies. I prefer the earlier like body horror stuff just because
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing that resonates more with me. But he's come back with Crimes of the Future.
Yeah, I haven't
There's
seen
definitely
that.
more in that. It doesn't like completely come together as a narrative, but
Yeah.
there's so many interesting and weird ideas in it.
Which
it
is like
feels
a
very like
remake of a movie that he did.
no,
was
he
it
did
a
a short
short?
film that was also called Crimes of the Future.
Okay.
But it has no connection other than the
Oh,
title.
okay.
But yeah, with the effects, I guess we'll go into that because that's the bulk of the movie. It's a showcase for some of the most I remember watching Joe Bob Briggs when I was little. It still lives in my mind. He aired this movie. It might have been the first time I saw it, and he described it as stuff to gross your sister out with.
Yeah.
And that's the movie.
It goes from just your basic pizza face look there at the beginning, then he gets that kind of cream of wheat cancer face. So great movie to gross your sister out with, isn't it?
But it has this, like, unlike The Thing, where you're just like marveling at the effects and how amazing and like creative and weird they are. Like I said, this movie has so much sadness to it that it kind of undercuts any sort of like, oh, it's so gross, where I'm just like sad and depressed when like his ear falls off.
Yeah.
And just seeing him like slowly lose his humanity.
That's not too terrible, is it? Most people would give anything to be turned into something else.
Turned into what?
What do you think, a fly? Am I becoming a 185-pound fly?
Well, the makeup itself is great because we see so many like iterations of it. It gets worse and worse. And at no point does he look like a fly until the very end.
Yeah.
So you're like, how is this gonna come together? And then his face just kind of falls off.
Yeah. Or
But you see these like weird lumps on his head. I know there was like an early design where the eyes would basically start on the back of the head and they would kind of move forward. And they didn't end up going with that, but it still has like where these lumps are, where it's like, oh, those are the fly eyes, like under his skin forming.
It's really gross.
It's
You know,
really
he has
disgusting.
greasy hair, and then like she kind of like
skin.
She's like pushes him away, and then his whole jaw comes off, and So it's like more literal, but up to that point, like thinking as an actor, like being in full body makeup, that'd be a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
I can only imagine like just getting facial makeup is probably just enough. Like that would be hell on its own, and then having to like be in full body makeup for like, I don't know, the whole day.
Yeah, he does have one. I don't know. The delivery of it is funny when he's climbing on the wall and he lifts up his shirt and he's like, "What's this?"
Oh, look at this. What's this? I don't know.
He's like, he reaches a point of acceptance where he's just sort of like amused by how horrific all the things that are happening to his body
It's
are.
like a great scene, yeah. And then he does that like gymnastic scene. That's sort of at the beginning when he like feels like he's Superman at that point.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. And the gymnast like suddenly gets like 2 feet shorter. when he's
and has a weird wig on.
It's Jim Cotta guy.
It's Jim Cotta.
That'd be amazing. But he's terrific. I think like the physicality of him, like, you know, he starts to get really like kind of twitchy and like
without ever being like too over the top.
Yeah.
He never goes too big with it. Where it's like even at the end when he has basically become a monster and he's like stealing her from the hospital and dragging her back to the lab. Where it's like you get the sense that he almost feels bad about doing this, but it's like the only option he can think of to like hold on to any sort of humanity.
The baby might be all that's left of the real me. Please don't kill me.
But I think, it's like because you follow his character throughout the sort of degradation, it's not like The Thing where it's like, 15 characters and you really don't get to know most of them a lot, This is just really sad. And he's kind of like documenting what's happening to him, like filming it and stuff. So it's just sort of adds to that. And I think by the end, like after he's fused with the telepod, it's just like, oh my God, like this is just...
Well, that's another, and then it does, he forms a romance with Gina Davis and all those early, like we were talking about the efficiency of the movie, it happens pretty quickly, but you totally buy it because their chemistry is so good. I know they were like together in real life.
Yeah.
So all those early scenes,
you can kind of see it. Is there ever like a more perfectly matched couple than like the two of them? They're both like, I don't know, weird and tall and gangly. He's so charming. It's just like, whatever.
But he's so oblivious too. Like that's what's great about his character. It's funny because it's a very Jeff Goldblum performance.
Yeah.
He's got his weird mannerisms that everybody kind of, memes on and jokes about. And I was thinking about that in relation to, he's a scientist in this, he's a scientist in Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Very similar, like the way he delivers his lines and stuff.
Yeah.
But in Jurassic Park, he comes across so cool.
Yeah.
And in this, he comes across so awkward and nerdy, but it's a very similar performance.
It is
But
weird.
he somehow like makes both of them work.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just like how like focused he is on the work in this one, whereas like, I don't know, Ian Malcolm is like this rock star, you know what I mean? He has like shirt undone, he's like dresses like a rock star. I think I told you this story where I met him in Vancouver. So I was in a hotel in Vancouver, and then I was going to the elevator, and then Jeff Goldblum was there waiting for the elevator, and he's very, very tall. He's like 6'4" or 5 or something,
Right.
and he had this like long red leather trench coat and these like biker boots on and sunglasses, and he looked like a fucking rock star. Like,
Okay.
you're just like, who is this person? And you're like, oh my God, it's Jeff Goldblum. And then he like held the elevator for me, and then we both went in, and then more and more people kept coming into the elevator, and he was getting like freaked out. He was like, oh, no, no, no.
Oh, no, 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 no.
No, no, no. Oh, no, no. And
Like
then
out loud he was saying
out loud,
these
he's like,
things?
no, 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 no. And then he got up and he's like, excuse me. And he like left the elevator.
Oh my God.
And then some lady was like, was that the fly?
I've come here to say one magic word to you.
Yeah?
Cheeseburger.
But yeah, their relationship forms pretty quickly, but believably.
For sure.
And I like his little like awkward moments, like because he's so unnatural in dealing with other people. When he's just like, is this a romance we're having? Is that what this is?
Is this a romance we're having? Is that what it is?
Yeah, could be a romance.
He's
Like
not
he
used to it.
understands it intellectually, but it can't verbalize it in any sort of like romantic way.
Yeah.
But then Gina Davis's boss,
John Getz.
Stathis Borins?
Stathis Borins.
Is his name. What's fascinating about him, he's such a sleazebag early
Yeah.
on. He's that like classic like 80s yuppie. If he were younger, he'd be played by like James Spader.
Yeah, I could see. And then if he was a bit older, it'd be Ron Silver.
Yeah, exactly. He's that character.
That skis bag.
I followed you. You stayed with Brundle all night. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think he'd look great in this. Don't you?
But what's interesting is that as unlikable as he is for most of the movie,
Yeah.
once shit gets real, once he sees like the footage of what's happening to Seth Brundle,
Yeah.
he's watching video of it that Gina Davis took, and then right after that, Gina Davis finds out she's pregnant. Like he has such a character shift that you don't usually get in this type of movie,
No.
where he becomes like completely like sympathetic towards her and supportive of her and like helps her out as much as he can.
And you get the feeling that maybe it's not like, you know, if you were more cynical, you could say, oh, he's just doing it to like get back with her or something like that. But it doesn't feel like that.
No, there's nothing in the movie like
Yeah,
that.
when he feels it's like real.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit.
She's pregnant and she wants to have an abortion.
In the middle of the night?
We have good reason to think that this child will be deformed.
But yeah, they go to the doctor in the middle of the night. It's like, why do you want the abortion? It's, we have reason to believe that the child will be deformed. Why do you think this?
That's the TLDR version.
The
We don't want to
father
explain.
is
He's a fly man.
deformed.
You don't want to explain that.
Yeah, when it's like the stakes are real, he kind of like changes modes. And like in another type of movie, you'd be rooting for him to die at the end, sort of thing.
Right, but yeah, he's the bad guy.
Yeah.
And it's rare to see a movie like this where that type of character takes a turn.
They have the funniest line, I think, in this scene where she's like, I'm finally onto something big.
Don't you get it? I am finally onto something that's big, huge.
Yeah? What? His cock?
Now, since we're talking about John Getz,
Yeah.
we'll bring up briefly, I haven't seen it in a very long time, but they made The Fly 2.
Yes.
The only actor it's directed by Chris Walas, who did the effects on the first
No
movie.
shit.
Yeah. That's why he didn't do the effects for Gremlins 2, because he was busy
no
directing The
kidding.
Fly 2.
Wow.
But yeah, no one, Cronenberg didn't come back.
Yeah.
So Jeff Goldblum, well, he couldn't really come back unless you have him as like a ghost or something. But
Ghost Goldblum.
but yeah, Gina Davis didn't come back. So the one actor they could get back from the first movie is John Getz. He has one scene and he's like completely lost his mind from the first movie. But because they knew no one would recognize him without a beard, they like glued on this shitty fake beard. And I think he just has like little stumps because his arm is, been melted off. And yeah, it's like a really like unintentionally funny scene because he's overacting. I think he kind of knows like the movie's not up to the caliber of the first one.
Dissolved my hand and my foot with fly vomit. I had no love for the man. He bugged me.
Okay, but we have to talk about the producer of this movie.
Oh yeah,
Mel Brooks.
Maybe we shouldn't, because the minute we mention Mel Brooks, he's in his 90s now.
Yeah.
No. In a week, he's not going to be around any longer.
When Stuart Kornfeld came to me and said, we're at Fox, and Fox has the rights to The Fly, and we should remake The Fly. And I said, you're stupid.
But I think Cronenberg had talked to him about doing a sequel, and Cronenberg had some more interesting ideas, I guess. And Mel Brooks is like, a sequel, you just got to do the same, but more.
Yeah.
And then he was like, I'm out. Sorry.
It's a prime example of like, yeah, especially like that era of
Yeah.
sequels where it's like they kind of took all the wrong lessons from the first movie.
Yes.
Like it's gross and it's mean-spirited, so we'll amp that up.
Yeah, it's really mean-spirited, the second one.
There's like a mutant dog.
Oh, that dog is,
and
oh
they
my
kill
God.
the dog in the movie, and yeah, it's just a lot like gorier.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun in like a schlocky way.
It
but
is.
It
It's like-
doesn't have that like.
It doesn't have the weight, the emotional weight, I think.
But that's more like there's lots of great gross out gags in the first movie. It feels like
Yeah.
the second movie was like built around that type of stuff.
It's like, that's what'll get people in seats.
Yeah, where it doesn't have that like shock element that the original movie has because you do kind of connect and care about these characters. But yeah, Mel Brooks, like he produced this movie.
Yeah.
He produced The Elephant Man.
Yes.
So in addition to, and I know like when Mel Brooks passes away, everyone's going to be talking about Blazing Saddles and all of his, great comedies. But I think it's important to point out like how much he propped up like two of the best and most interesting filmmakers of all time.
And didn't want his name on them because like it just looks weird. He said it would just throw people off if they saw like Mel Brooks in the credits.
Yeah, they just
So you
associate
don't
with comedy
Yeah,
or
it's just at
something.
the very end. It's like a Brooks film production or something. And you're like, oh shit, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he met David Lynch through, I don't know if it's the writer or the producer of this. Like they introduced him to him or something like
Probably
that.
the producer.
Yeah,
Because I
it
know
might have
the
been.
original script, the original version of this movie, it had a different director.
Oh, some like British guy. I
Yeah,
remember.
and I want to say he had like a family tragedy and had to leave.
Yeah, but I think David Cronenberg rewrote everything. He said there's only one line from the original script in it, but then he fought for the guy to have a co-writer credit.
Oh, okay.
Just whatever. He just said like the script wouldn't exist without like his original
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Oh, so much of the dialogue is very like you can tell it's Cronenberg. Like it's not somebody else's words. Like all the explanation, it's so great too. Like when he's explaining how. He hasn't figured out how to make like humans or whatever,
Yeah.
or living creatures.
Flesh.
He cuts a steak in half, puts one half of it in the telepod,
Yeah.
and she says, oh, it tastes funny.
Funny how?
It tastes synthetic.
It's like just a simple way of explaining
Yeah.
what is going on because he hasn't taught he hasn't taught the computer about the poetry of the steak.
But it doesn't, not yet. I haven't taught the computer to be made crazy by the flesh.
But it's a great way of explaining it because you like understand it and it isn't just like tech gobbledygook.
Yeah, exactly.
That a lot more modern movies would do. Just like, oh, well, I got to do this, something like that.
You just kind of brush over it, or
You just brush it over. It's not important, and you get the concept. It's very like simple to understand, I think.
And something is getting lost in the translation.
Me. I'm lost.
There's one moment in a movie that I keep talking about the kind of tone of it, how it feels so sad, but there's one moment that feels a little too silly for the rest of the movie, which is when she's at the hospital about to have the abortion, and Jeff Goldblum just jumps through the window, breaks the wall like the Kool-Aid Man.
It feels like Phantom of the Opera or something.
I was thinking of like classic Universal monsters, like when he's up on the top of his building watching them get in the car to leave.
And then
Feels
they have the
very,
conversation, and he's kind of learning that she's going to have an abortion.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh.
And that's when it has that kind of, almost like operatic element in the
Or
Howard
like
Shore score.
Dark Man
really
or something.
Works. Yeah.
Like watching from the rooftops.
Yeah.
Now there's the first test. It's sort of like he sets it up saying to Gina Davis that it can only do inanimate objects. Like he can't do anything organic or living yet. And at one point he like tests out this baboon teleport. I mean, why would he even try it if he knows that it can't do? And first of all, where's he getting baboons from?
You see, there's in the background of a few shots, you see like crates of previous baboons.
Oh, for God's sake.
I think it's one part when he's having an argument with Gina Davis. She's like about to leave. And yeah, if you pay attention to the set deck.
It looks like a cat carrier, but
it's
it's like
a giant baboon carrier.
Yeah.
There's
Where's
a
he
couple
getting
of
these
them.
things?
From Bartok Industries, the company he works for.
Okay, all right. They're, like,
Which is a
funding
nice
him.
detail when they talk early on. Like he's very like humble with the way he talks about all this
Yeah.
stuff. Where he's like, I'm basically like a middle manager. Like I tell one person to make this, one person to make that.
He
and
just
then
puts it together.
I just put it together.
So nobody knows what the actual project is that he's working on. But I guess he's funded by Bartok Industries, but they're never mentioned again, which is kind of like...
No, they go into it more, Bartok Industries, in the second movie.
Right, okay.
Kind of like, I don't know, like Weyland-Yutani and
Yeah.
Aliens, where it's just this background, like, corporation.
I like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's sort of like mentioned and it's not important. But I think, like, we're talking about modern movies. If this was redone, they would be, like, a big part of it. They would be all over this fucking movie.
But yeah, so he does these experiments on baboons, which leads to one of the most horrific things you'll ever see, where the baboon gets turned inside out.
Well, what happens when you try to teleport living things?
Not while we're eating.
Can't be worse than this.
This is grosser than I remember. Like, it's so disgusting.
Well, it's so much worse, too, because it's still alive, and it's, like, writhing around. And...
There's, like, the good reveal. I like how they kind of use the smoke to kind of hide what's in the telepod, you know, at first. You just sort of see the gradual, it spills out, and it's revealed, and you kind of hear, like, the like noises.
Squishy noises.
Oh, and you feel so awful for it.
But the baboon, there's another one that he tests that works later.
I did not know this.
And it's a famous movie baboon named Typhoon, who's a best of the worst legend because he's in 3, not just 1, not 2, but 3 best of the worst movies.
Really? Oh, Treasure of the... No, wait.
Yeah, he was in... he was the monkey driving the tank in... Order of the Black Eagle.
Okay, yeah, right.
Then the other movie in that franchise was Unmasking the Idol. But then, most famously, of course, he is the titular role of Shakma.
Shocking audiences everywhere.
Yeah, the experiment, he gets to work the second time. And that's another thing, like, with the human aspect of it, where what motivates him to actually try it on himself. He's just, like, drunk and...
Gina Davis, like, takes off. She has to do something. He's like, jealous that...
Yeah, he gets jealous of her ex-boyfriend. He thinks that maybe they're still involved.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just, like, out of, like, drunk jealousy, he tests the telepod on himself, and that's what kicks off the whole story.
Yeah.
But that adds, such a, like, I don't know, such a, like, a human touch to it.
Yeah. Good thing he didn't have it with, like, a whiskey bottle or something. Get fused with that.
Like, the whiskey bottle was in the telepod with him? Oh, my
just
Lord.
His hand is like a whiskey bottle.
Well, then he's just, like, permanently drunk. He comes out, he's just a constant state of drunk. That is another thing. Before he starts to, like, get sick and deteriorate, he feels, like, revived. Like, he says it's rejuvenated him.
Fly strength.
Yeah, but then he starts to get, like too much energy. And there's a middle part of the movie where it almost feels like I was saying, a lot of it is like Gina Davis is reacting to him like you would with, like, you know, someone you love who has cancer or something.
Yeah.
But the middle part of the movie is almost more like dealing with somebody who has, like, an addiction problem.
I told you I'm scared to do it. What do I have to say? I'm not gonna do it.
You're a fucking drag, you know that?
Yeah, and he's very, like, angry and
his emotions are out of control. He's I love that scene in the cafe.
Oh, and
he's just pouring so much sugar. I always think of, like, his weird delivery when he's, like, trying to get the waiter to come over and he's like, waiter, Jesus Christ.
Praise God.
Let's go. Move. Catch me if you can. Waiter, Jesus Christ.
He kind of misunderstands. He thinks that the pod has, like, rejuvenated him somehow. He doesn't understand what's going on, so he thinks it's, like, this magical thing where he just, like, breaks. Like, his...
But yeah, he has these moments where he just lashes out at her. Or he's like, would a sick man be able to do this? And he's just, like, punching the wooden beam on the wall. Like, all those things feel very, like, out of control. Like, you're in a relationship with someone who's an addict and you don't know what to do.
So you just, like, take off.
So much of the movie, hinges on Gina Davis's performance.
Yeah. And it sort of drives him. He goes out on his own. He's like, I'm going to find another woman. So he, like, goes out to this sleazy bar. He's walking down, like, Yonge Street. Goes to this, like, sleazy bar and, like, gets into an arm wrestling match with this guy. Now, I didn't know this, but the guy whose arm that he breaks, he is, like, a champion heavyweight Canadian boxer, George Chuvalo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if he did much before this or after it.
I just think it's crazy that, because he says, you know, if I beat you in this arm wrestling match, your lady comes home with me, fucking, like, rips the bone out of his arm.
Oh, that's
and
so
the lady
gross.
is just like, let's go to another bar before we go back to your place. Like, what?
Okay.
You run away in horror.
You're hot.
Let's go back to my place.
Yeah, well, okay.
I love that whole set. That's like fantastic.
Yeah.
But like the exterior, so I'm like noticing a lot of Toronto locations in this. In this location, when she's in the particle headquarters, like in John Getz's office during the daytime, and their first thing. So behind her, outside, down below, there's like this red brick building with like a mural on it. And that's like a famous park in Toronto called Birksey Park. So it's like this beautiful like dog park, with this famous mural. And like I actually recently shot a commercial there and we had to remove the mural because it was too iconic, I guess, or something. But they have this really cool like fountain in the middle of the park. It's for dogs, and they have all these dog sculptures looking up at the fountain.
Do they have any, like here in Milwaukee, we have the bronze fawns. Is there anywhere in Toronto that has like Jeff Goldblum, Seth Brundle
The bronze fly. They should have like the bronze Cronenberg. I'm surprised they don't.
He's the way you associate, like, I don't know, John Waters with Baltimore.
Yeah.
I associate Cronenberg with Toronto.
Yeah, this is fun picking up. And then his the exterior of his lab is actually this place called Liberty Village, which is now like built up. So all the kind of rundown warehouses.
Oh, okay.
And it's actually the same location in the very first police academy. At the end, where they're like fighting the guy on the rooftop, and there's like the big shootout. That's like the same location.
Oh, that's funny.
And I also think that Back in Action was shot there when they're driving the cars around those old like warehouse buildings and stuff.
Oh, that kind of mid-movie car chase scene. Okay.
I think that's around the same location. One good thing I want to single out was the production design. Especially like the telepod design of that.
Oh yeah,
they look fantastic.
Well, they look believable.
Yeah,
they don't look like super like crazy sci-fi
like
movie.
Just a little bit, you know what I mean? It's like they're maybe a little too slick or something like that. But the design is like iconic. Like they look so cool.
And it's a great touch too when he's first trying to like impress Gina Davis. And he mentions, he's like, well, this is the original one. It was like the
prototype.
The prototype.
It's a little clunky.
It's a little clunky. So, but it establishes it as just like, oh, this is the first version he made. But then it plays an important part of the story later on.
But it doesn't have the glass door for like good reason. Just as far as like revealing what's happening.
But yeah, so many little touches like that where it's introducing things that'll pay off later in a way that feels really like natural, where you're not thinking about it.
Yeah, the computer he uses too is like really. I remember being back in high school, like rewatching this and like, oh man, the graphics on that computer are amazing. What resolution do you think those are? But when my very first job in the VFX industry was working on RoboCop, the TV series that was shot in Toronto, and my boss, Lee Wilson, VFX supervisor, had worked on The Fly and a bunch of Cronenberg movies. So he was the computer graphics display supervisor for The Fly. So I guess he handled all the graphics and stuff like that. But they're used to great effect as far as like the reveal. There's that one moment where, you know, he kind of realizes, oh shit, there were like two things in the telepod. And then it's like, what was the second thing? And then they kind of start electron microscope kind of like level, and then it like keeps zooming out. And you sort of like see bits of the fly, and then it's gradually revealed that it's like the fly. But like that whole interface is really cool.
Yeah, I noticed on this rewatch, the like the text that appears on screen, I'd never noticed it before, but in like clear HD, there's some slight jitter to it where it's like, oh, this is like a separate element, like
it's like an optical element
that was added in after the fact. So that's something I would have noticed before.
Yeah, it's like certain little things. I remember when John Getz is getting his hand burned off, or melted. That was like done the same way as like Raiders of the Lost Ark, like the face melt. It was like a heat gun or something, and it was shot in multiple passes. But you can see it's sort of like shaking like this throughout the whole thing, and it's like it's actually like an optical composite. So they shot like a time lapse of that and like kind of merged a few takes together, and then I guess composited over like the background. But if you watch that again, you can kind of see this like shake, and I guess it's supposed to be him like, you know, shaking.
So it's
like
not
that.
Just a static mannequin arm or whatever. It's a little clunky. That's like one of the less good effects of the movie.
No, I think it's like it's still effective because of his like performance and stuff.
Sure.
And especially when the foot gets dissolved, and it's just like, ugh.
Yeah.
This computer, by the way, the most ergonomically horrific like thing I've ever seen. He's like, I got to teach it. He's programming, but he's like sitting on this bar stool, and it's like the computer keyboard is like angled like that, and he's just like typing like this. It's like, oh my god.
It's also the first at the time. It was probably, I'm sure, like a crazy sci-fi concept, but where he's just like vocalizing to the computer and telling it to do things.
Brundle, Seth.
Now it's so common, but
even now it kind of sucks.
But it does work into the story. Like, he talks to the computer and it does things on his command. But then as he's turning more and more into the Fly, like his voice deteriorates and doesn't recognize him anymore.
Yeah, and then he's got to go to manual input, which is it's a great way of showing his sort of like degradation.
That's when the third act, when he's basically lost all humanity.
You go there. We come apart. And we come together there.
There's a lot of good things, like nice reveals through using the computer interface, and especially at the end when John Getz shoots the connecting cable between Gina Davis's pod, and then it he kind of halfway breaks out of his telepod, and it kind of merges him with the thing, and then it's just the text on the screen. It's fusion of Brundle and telepod complete, and it's you can't see anything because it's the old janky one which doesn't have the glass, and it's just your imagination just takes over. Oh god, what's that going to look like? And it's just as bad as you think.
He comes out with just this door sticking out of his abdomen.
He's kind of trailing the pipe and stuff. It's just so gross. But you feel so horrible for this thing at this point.
Well, that's like I said, it's so sad. He's turned into this creature, and as Gina Davis convinces her to completely unspoken because he can't talk anymore. He's a fly.
He kind of takes the gun and puts it down
and makes her pull the trigger, and then she's just bawling her eyes out. Cut to credits. We're done. He's dead.
Did you see the deleted scenes? There was a deleted ending.
I know there was an ending, which I'm glad they cut for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
One, because I think it's so great to just end it on this horrible note.
Yeah.
It's so tragic. But then also, there was the deleted ending where she's in bed with
the butterfly baby.
Yeah, she has a dream about him being reborn as a butterfly or something.
Yeah, I think.
But she's in bed with John Getz, isn't she?
Yes.
So that kind of shows they got back together, which I don't really like.
Yeah, John Getz. He gets his
John
gets his ladies.
Yeah.
But that was weird. Yeah, so it's this chrysalis or something, the butterfly baby. I guess it's a more hopeful ending or something, which I don't think it needs.
I don't think it...
It doesn't look very good.
Yeah, and also just I don't know, we were talking about the efficiency of the storytelling, where it's he's dead, we're out.
Yeah, you don't need it, which is great.
And then you have that bombastic Howard Shore score come on.
But there is another deleted scene. Did you see that with the baboon and the cat?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's so awful. I'm glad they cut that.
I think we get enough animal cruelty that the point gets made.
Yeah, he's full gone. He's almost, the Fly, and then he's he merges the cat and the baboon, and it's this horrific thing that scurries off, and then he ends up beating it to death, and it's just it's so mean. Glad they cut it, because it's you want to feel sympathy for him, and it's at that point he would have just been
well, it's also, does that come at a point where he's coming up with the idea, because Ronnie's pregnant with his baby.
Yeah.
He thinks she's going to have an abortion, so he decides to fuse all three of them together into one being.
Yeah, he kind of.
So is that kind of his where that scene comes? Is that when he's testing out the idea?
I don't
of doing
know.
That?
I've only seen it just sort of. It's on whatever, I don't know, some disc or something like that. But I've only seen it without context, so I don't know where it kind of came in.
It seems like it would probably be right around there. So it's good, because then you're just imagining what would happen if all three of these. He's doing it out of desperation, but if all three of them were fused together, not having that visual of what would actually happen, I think makes it even scarier.
Yeah, it's very weird. They kind of go into that in The Fly 2, and it kind of works out perfectly. No, there was a song for the end credits. I don't know if you saw the credit. It's at the very, very end, where they usually have the music credits, and it's a Brian Ferry song called "Help Me" that he wrote for this movie, that they were going to have over the end credits, and then when they heard it, it's this is kind of inappropriate. Let's just have the score play over it.
Is it called "Help Me" as a reference to the original The Fly? Because I know I saw the original The Fly, and this movie I guess it's technically a remake, but it's so different. It's basically just scientist man turns into a fly.
It's more of like a gradual degradation, whereas you don't
have a guy with a goofy fly head on.
he had the fly arm and the fly head.
But I saw the original one when I was a little kid, and I remember like that ending really creeped me out.
Oh,
where
God.
you got the little fly body with the human head. Help me! Like that's so like burned into my brain.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's a reference to that. He does say "help me" in this though.
Yeah, he does. He's like hugging Gina Davis, and he's like, "Help me,
Help me. Please help me.
Haven't heard the song "Help Me" by Bryan Ferry,
But it's still in the credits.
It's still in the credits, so maybe they, paid him for it, and we're going to use it, and it's just like, let's just pull it. But
That's like apparently the song "Maniac." He's a maniac.
Yeah.
It's used in, is that Footloose?
No, Flashdance.
Flashdance.
Yeah.
It's famous for that, but it was supposedly written for the movie Maniac. the disgusting Tom Savini effects slasher movie.
Are you kidding?
Supposedly. And they were like, this isn't appropriate for this movie. So then he just repurposed it for another movie.
Oh, that's funny.
the story. That's
Okay.
the lore. That's supposedly
I
a real
choose to
thing.
believe that.
Yeah.
So I'll have to listen to Bryan Ferry.
It's like auto-tuned.
That's like the only thing I remember from that first one, the original.
Yeah, that and just the big goofy fly
The big
head.
goofy fly head.
I've seen all of them. I have a box set here with the original 3 and then the 2 80s ones. I've seen them all, but it's been a really long time.
Vincent Price is in that one.
He's in the first one, yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember anything about the sequels.
Yeah, what are there, 2 other ones?
The Fly, Curse of the Fly, Return of the Fly.
Return of the Curse of the Fly.
Return of the Curse of the Planet of the Apes of the Fly.
Superfly.
That's, of course, my favorite Fly film. But this is...
Flying Ryan.
Where is it?
Barfly.